Today, we're going to go deep, right under the skin, to talk about closed injuries. You know, the kind where what you can't see is often way more dangerous than what you can.
I mean, of course you have, right? We all have. That throbbing, colorful spot you get from walking into a coffee table. It's a totally universal experience. It hurts, for sure, but because the skin isn't broken, we usually just kind of shrug it off. But what's really happening under there?
So, here's our game plan. First, we'll define what's actually happening under the surface. Then, we'll talk about the everyday bruise, also known as a contusion. From there, we'll level up to something more serious called a hematoma. And then we'll get into the most severe of them all, crush injuries. And of course, we'll wrap it all up with the key things you absolutely need to remember. Okay, let's get right into it. This first part is all about the big idea. Understanding what's going on under the surface is the absolute key to figuring out why some of these injuries are so much more dangerous than they look. So here's the official definition, nice and simple. A closed injury is any time your soft tissues, we're talking muscles, blood vessels, all the stuff under your skin that isn't bone, get damaged, but the skin itself doesn't break. This is the big umbrella term for everything we're about to cover. You should think of these as little clues your body is sending you. The pain, the swelling, that classic black and blue discoloration, every single one is a signal about the trauma that happened below the surface. It's the outside evidence of an inside event, almost always caused by some kind of blunt force. All right, with that foundation set, let's jump into the most familiar closed injury there is, the contusion. But you almost certainly know it by its more common name, a bruise. So what is a bruise, really? Well, it's what happens when a blunt force smacks into you and tears the body's tiniest blood vessels. These are called capillaries, right under the skin. That little bit of internal tearing is what causes the bleeding that we see as that colorful mark. And this breaks it down perfectly. It's a super simple process. First, you get the impact. Second, those tiny capillaries break. Third, a little bit of blood leaks out into the nearby tissue. And fourth, that leaked blood creates the colorful mark we all know as a bruise. The key word here is leak. It's a small, contained leak. Okay, but what happens when it's more than just a tiny leak from tiny vessels? Well, that brings us to our next category, and this is where things start to get a whole lot more serious. We're talking about the hematoma. Now, this right here is the crucial difference. If a contusion is a small leak, then a hematoma is a pool. This happens when bigger blood vessels get torn and a lot of blood collects in one spot. It'll often form a lump you can actually feel. So remember that, leak versus pool. It's the most important distinction to make. And just how big can that pool get? Well, in a really bad case, a large hematoma can actually hold over a liter of blood. Just let that sink in. That's a huge amount of blood to lose, and it's all happening internally, where you can't see it. It's a pretty stark reminder of why these are so much more dangerous than a simple bruise. And these pools of blood can show up in different places. Some are just under the skin or deep inside a muscle, but others, like subdural or epidural hematomas, well, they form near the brain. And as you can imagine, those are extremely life-threatening medical emergencies. And now we're moving to the very top of the severity pyramid, crush injuries. This is where the hidden danger of closed injuries becomes terrifyingly real, because you have both massive force and time working against the person. This quote, man, it really says everything, doesn't it? A crush injury is incredibly deceptive. Somebody could be pulled from a collapsed building or a car wreck and seem okay, maybe just a little shaken up, but underneath, catastrophic damage has been done. You have to assume the worst with these injuries, always. The severity of these injuries isn't just random. It comes down to two key things. First, the incredible amount of force involved. And second, just as important, is the duration, how long that force was actually crushing the body part. These two things create a truly lethal combination. So when that crushing time goes on for too long, a deadly condition called crush syndrome can kick in. See, as the tissues are being crushed, they start to die and release all these harmful toxins. You can think of the heavy object like a dam, holding all those toxins back. The second you lift that pressure, the dam breaks, and all those toxins flood into the bloodstream, which can cause massive organ failure. It's horrifying. So what's the tipping point? Well, the general rule of thumb is about 4 hours. If a body part has been pinned under immense pressure for more than 4 hours, the risk of this deadly syndrome goes through the roof. For first responders, it is literally a race against the clock. Whew, okay, we've gone all the way from a simple bruise to a full-blown, life-threatening emergency. So let's boil all this down to the most important takeaways from our little journey under the skin. First, and this is the big one, just because the skin isn't broken, it does not mean everything is okay. Second, burn this into your brain. A hematoma is a pool of blood, not just a leak like a bruise. Third, always treat crush injuries with extreme caution. They are sneaky and incredibly dangerous. And finally, never forget that with crush injuries, the clock is ticking. Time is everything. So I'll leave you with this question. The next time you see a simple bruise on yourself or someone else, are you just going to see a colored mark? Or are you now going to see those tiny broken capillaries, the leaked blood, and the whole hidden world of injuries that can happen just beneath the surface?